quick warning, this game touches on sensitive topics like self-harm, mental illness, and an offensive interpretation of what having D.I.D is like. Also, glitching effects, flashing lights, and loud screeching for anyone who may be photosensitive. I'm not going to include it as I experienced it,
blaring and completely out of nowhere,
but I will show you the sounds. So,
viewer discretion is advised, like a motherfucker!
So let's begin ripping this game to shreds. Ow! I just scratched the shit out of my face! Hello everyone, this is me, Dead on Arrival Girl. You may call me Lily. No. Not that Lily. The better Lily. The cooler Lily. The not edgy to be edgy Lily. Welcome to the very first episode of Dead Ratings. What is Dead Ratings, you may ask? This is a series where I play games all the way through and give my thoughts on them. I'm still working out some of the kinks in the criteria for the series, but that's the beauty of the comment section. If you think that there are parameters I should add or exchange, let me know down below. If I do end up selecting something from one of you, you'll be featured in the credits on each video where it's included. I've always played games with this sort of odd perspective. I can't not watch movies, TV, or even porn without there being some cohesive story to carry the actions along and justify what I'm seeing. Yes. It's horrible to watch movies with me. It's becoming especially prevalent as I have been gaming more on Twitch.
You should follow me on there too. Links down below.
So I'm starting to see games in that same light, and holy mackerel, I have questions for quite a few people. Yeah, that's right. I'm looking at you, fucking Airtight Games. I'm coming for your ass next. However, I'm not just going to bitch and moan about what I don't like and leave it there. I think that in most cases, there is a chance for redemption, and as bad as most remakes have been, good remakes can really change the game. So even though I have no experience or certifications in any of the fields I'll be discussing, I'll be proposing ways where I feel that the game could be improved and how I feel that the game probably could have been far more successful, in my opinion. This series is specifically for games that I feel had huge potential and fell flat. Now that introductions are out of the way, let's see what game is up on the chopping block today. When you first look at the Steam page, you're greeted with a very pretty picture of Reflection of Mine, featuring two of our main characters, Emily Limbs, the gothic-looking one, and Lily Witchkin, the host. The game's description has it as a psychological puzzle game about... Hold up. A dark puzzle video game about the dissociative identity disorder. The entire game takes place in the broken mind of Lily Witchkin, and the goal is to discover who is real, Lily herself or one of her many personalities. Okay. Before we even start playing this game, what the actual fuck? Look, I understand that most games with a scary or frightening element will use characters with unique psychologies to tell a story. I also understand that to create a big bad for a story, you need to have some things be in a worst-case scenario. However, this is all possible without feeding into the negative stigma that surrounds these unique psychologies. And though I shouldn't have to say this, I know some kids out there who think that mental illness is trendy or cute need to hear it. I use the word unique, but that is not to be taken in the way that, oh, this mental illness will make me special, makes me stand out, because that's not the case at all. Mental illnesses are not something that can be put on and taken off like clothes when they're in style. It's something that people live with and fight every single day. There is coping, there is recovery, but there is almost never a cure, and sometimes the sufferers don't make it. This stuff I know from experience. Trust me, I know how much it sucks when people think that something's wrong with you but then pretend that they have the same thing because it'll make them seem special. People's mental illness is not a fashion statement. To break the ice a little more, let's go over really quick what D.I.D. actually is. Based on this Steam page alone, this developer knows maybe the bare minimum about the actual disorder. If it turns out this guy actually has a degree in psychology, that'll just make how awful the D.I.D. portrays in this game even worse. The game is literally feeding into a whole stereotype and misconception about D.I.D., and that can be really harmful to people with it as a whole. To start, D.I.D. stands for Dissociative Identity Disorder. The existence of two or more distinct identities or personality states. I know that can be a little daunting of a sentence if you haven't heard of it before, so I'll do my best to explain it simply. I am not by any means a medical professional or a mental health professional. I'm doing the best I can with the information that I have. I'll likely be giving some overly wordy explanations, but that's because there are a lot of big words in this, and I want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. Not everyone knows all the things you know, so be polite to each other in the comments, me included. Let's break it down, starting with dissociation. Dissociation is a break in how you process information. Your brain kicks into overdrive because you are under a serious amount of stress. Some situations you'd back away from, but one of your personalities, or alters as they are often called, would take the mental wheel and face it head on. Identity, without getting too philosophical, is the state of who or what you are. I identify as a woman named Lily. My friends identify as they or them. In short, it is just you existing as who or what you are. Disorder, as a word alone, can mean mess, whereas in the psychology sense, it is characterized as abnormal feelings, thoughts, or behaviors. It is, in short, a mental disorder. It is not a disease that can be caught, transmitted, or shared. So, all you peeps out there trying to fake one because you think it's trendy or makes you seem interesting, knock it off, because you're part of the problem. Also, you're gonna get found out. It's not an if, it's a when, and everyone will know, and you're probably going to cry. I don't think you want that. If I could give my mental trauma and pain to someone else that wanted it for some reason, I'd give it to them in a heartbeat, because I don't want it! Anyways, D.I.D. is how someone's brain may try to cope with a serious and consistent trauma. Imagine the last time you personally got overwhelmed. Try to remember what you were feeling and thinking at the time. Imagine feeling that all the time. Life would be hell. Basically, your brain at the ages of around 6 to 8 years old is developing your personality, and trauma can cause another personality to form within yourself. It is not a split per se. It is more of your brain putting up walls to compartmentalize or box up different pieces of your memories so it can process them without overwhelming whoever is in the mental driver's seat. Without this compartmentalizing, the brain may not have been able to move past the trauma. Still with me so far? Good. This varies with the situations you encounter or the way your brain boxes up the trauma. Your mind, in that moment, cannot handle the information, so it sets it aside until it's ready to be processed and added to your mental file cabinet of memory. The alters, or alternate states of consciousness, also vary. No two are ever the exact same, and there's no way to predict how your mind will react. They can be non-human, dead, or ghosts. It would all vary entirely based on the way you process your trauma and the trauma itself. There are a ton of deeper facets into it, so I'll put some links down below to give a much more detailed explanation on D.I.D. as a whole. Some key words we're going to use before we go into this game are as follows. Alters, the personalities or characters that we meet. System, the personalities as a whole. Fronting. Whoever is in the mental driver's seat or controlling the body's actions. And roles. The responsibility or purpose a personality and character has for existing. And host. The most prominent personality in the system. So, what are the goals of this review/playthrough/video? Determine the roles each alter plays in Lily's system. Learn how accurate the depiction of D.I.D is in this game, since it's the top selling point. Overall playability and potential replay value. Bugs and glitches, etc. Determine if the game is properly rated and advertised, etc. And is the story any good? Alrighty, I think we've done enough prep. Let's begin. Fuck. So, there's this buzzing in the entire first day of this gameplay. Kinda messes up my original plan for the video. So I will work with what I have. Wait, the trailer said the music was provided by Tears of Eve, and then the credits say that Expect More did it. A little unclear, but let's see if the internet can help me with this. The short answer is hardly. I couldn't even find a confirmed account or anything from Tears of Eve that wasn't uploaded by someone else, and Expect More seems to only have 3 credits to their name, one of which is Reflection of Mine, the other is another game made by the same guy, and wait, what the fuck is that? You have got to be fucking kidding me. I feel like that has just as much credibility as a fanfiction writer saying that the anime creators are having their work put into the show. Back to the music. While I have nothing against Expect More, gotta get that bag, you know, I can't help but feel like one of the most often used pieces from their album is a really clear remix of Midnight Syndicate's Grisly Reminder. That song was commonly associated with creepypasta and music box renditions back in the Wild West days of YouTube. It was used with Slender Man documentaries and scary background music for spooky games. In this game, it feels like it was ripped off a bit, but I mean, I can't find any sort of credit for Midnight Syndicate, you know, the OG creator of that tune. That's not to say that the remix that Expect More did is bad. In fact, the music they provided to this game is the best part of it. If it were as bad as the game itself, then I would have just ripped on that. But the music itself is rather nice. It's got that creepy feel, it's haunting, and honestly, I'm gonna be blasting that shit out of my speakers during October to give the trick-or-treaters the creeps. Hell, I feel like the music outshines the game amazingly. I also tried to look into some of the other people included on this, and for some reason, the only one that I can find with certainty is Maddie Larson. She's a very talented vocal artist, and honestly, she kind of shares the same aesthetic that I do. Going through her Twitter feed, I can't even find her mention her work on this game at all, which leads me to believe that she may not be very proud of her inclusion here. This is all speculation though, since I literally can't find anything about this game anywhere else. Maybe it's because the developer is Russian and I can't decipher a good amount of what I'm finding, but I'm very open to being told that my upset is uncalled for. But please back it up with something factual instead of just, your opinion is wrong. I did a lot of digging into the frickin' developing of this game and ended up finding an interview by Peter Ward on Retro Games Master. It's one of those interviews where you don't see or hear anything to verify that they're actually talking to the developer, but all the links to his work are here, so I'll take this with a grain of salt. The developer talks about how they would embellish the game's stories that he'd play when retelling them to others, making them better in his opinion. His listeners were then disappointed when the things he'd talk about wouldn't actually be in the game. He then talks about how he draws with a mouse and Micromedia Flash 8. Okay, I'll let slide some of the artistic polish that this game needs. The developer does mention that he enjoyed studying psychology, and the alleged degree that this guy has in it leads me to speculate that he knows the ins and outs of mental illness. He just doesn't care about it. The strangely sexualized imagery, the clear inexperience in the advertising, and the overall poor result for the game, I actually fear what the first draft of this game was like. Upon choosing to start a new game and being greeted with music that sets a hauntingly uneasy tone, we're taken to our difficulty screen. Our choices are phobia, hysteria, and neurosis. The last one only being available upon completion of the game. I'm not a noob, so I'm going to start on normal mode. My only criticism with this is that there's no model for hysteria mode. We have one for phobia, and we have one for neurosis, but not hysteria. That may just be me seeing a bit of an imbalance, but it's not a make or break sort of thing. The art depictions are lovely. I appreciate the symbolism with her being naked and messy because of the dictionary set definition for disorder. Nudity is often used in art and media to portray vulnerability, a state of bearing all, if you will. However, my assumption that this was the intended purpose for the naked art portrayals is shifted as I play this game. You'll understand why as I go on. I also appreciate that little Easter egg at the start. Whether it was intended or not, I like it. I didn't notice this upon my initial playthrough, but we can see a few of Lily's altars around the edges of the screen, just barely visible. I like this as a possible metaphor for how, even though Lily is fronting, her other personalities are waiting in the wings. Also, the screen just keeps jerking like that, and it's incredibly annoying. I'm so sorry. Lily seems confused when the man asks how he should call her, saying he should just call her by her name, Lily. We learn that he's a psychologist, and she's there to see him because she tends to lose her memory. We'll also see that sometimes when Lily interacts with others or just speaks in general, alters will drop their 2 cents as well. This is interesting as it suggests that Lily switches very frequently, from Lily to alter then right back to Lily again in rapid succession. The reason I come to that conclusion from these little interactions is because of this interaction here. Lily has stopped to ask for directions from this guy who recognizes her as being a witchkin, which, by the way, we never know why her family is well known enough to get recognized by total strangers. When he asks her what she's doing in this part of town, one of her alters answers, and the guy comments on how her ability to change her voice was impressive. Because of that interaction, we're left to believe that whenever one of her alters adds their own little something to the sentence, it's not just in Lily's head. Whoever she's talking to can hear it. This makes me look at our opening interaction with the Doctor differently. That whenever Emily, the Gothic alter, speaks, the Doctor hears her, but just doesn't react to it. He also just dumps a shit ton of other issues on her without any sort of heads up like, girl, you don't know the half of it. Apparently, Lily burned down a church, a hotel, escaped an asylum, witnessed a murder, and disappeared for 2 weeks. And later we learned that those events are not in chronological order either. Lily doesn't remember any of that, and her alter accuses her of not wanting to remember, implying that Lily is feigning ignorance. She's not. The alter is being a massive bitch. The Doctor doesn't even try to level with Lily, just moves on and asks her if she recognizes any of the diaries on the table. She only recognizes hers, while her alter recognizes Lily's and her own. The Doctor then uses an outdated term for D.I.D. by calling it multiple personality syndrome, and gives a vague and oversimplified explanation as to what it does to her memories. Lily describes her memories as an assortment of broken islands, that she can't see the whole picture, which is a rather dreamy way of looking at it. It also provides a sort of artistic metaphor to work off of, which I like. That being said, This is seemingly meant to be set as a framing device, and that we are actually going back to the events that started everything to begin with. So the beginning of the game is actually part of the recovery process or aftermath of the game's events for Lily. We're then greeted with an intro sequence. Ah, yes, this should help put things into perspective for us now.
My name is Lily Witchgan. I have to answer to this name. And I have never considered myself to be crazy. I don't even need to take medicine.
I throw whole packs of pills into my mouth and eat the recipe after that.
My life is wonderful. I have many good friends.
I hate them, I hate them, I hate.
And my fluffy cat always awaits me home.
Someday I will nail him by his tail to the door.
I live in a wonderful house far away from the hustle and bustle of the city.
These runes will rot very soon.
But then, what makes me write all of this? Why do I need a diary?
Because you've gone mad, Lily. Mad!
There was not a single wound on my body, but I started to find razors scattered around the house, covered in someone's blood.
You're so inattentive, Lily. Don't you remember how good it was to cut our skin?
Also, I started to find hairs of different color on my brush. They told me I witnessed a murder. I was blamed for the arson of a church and a hotel, but I wouldn't do anything like that.
I love the smell of the smoke. I love the view of the blood. I'll never forget all the deaths that follow me.
I didn't believe any of these things. I thought they were a joke. Finally, I understand. I was there and saw all these terrible things, but I didn't see it with my own eyes, but with the eyes of the one who stares at me from the other side of the mirror. They are a very scary sight.
That's because my eyes see right through you. Your memory is a still unfinished puzzle in you, Lily. Got only the bright colors.
I started to notice them after I got lost in the woods.
What can you remember about this? Do you remember how we starved? How scary was it? How we escaped from wolves and those goddamn birds?
I didn't meet any wild animals then. I survived eating only berries. Like someone else was near to me and cared about me all the way back home.
Like someone took all your pain and fear. Yes, Lily. Someone was there.
I have to see him. I must remember. That creature brought me out of the forest's dangerous labyrinth. I have to thank him and give him a present.
Give me loneliness, Lily.
What the actual fuck, man? This gives us really nothing. Yes, it hints at future things we'll get to see, but other than that, it just strikes me as something edgy teenagers live for. Also, that little bit about the creature who got her out of the woods means nothing. We never find anything else in this game that tells us of Lily's rescue or anything of the sort. It gave us a potential endgame for the player to work towards, but there isn't one. Is this another one of those disappointing embellishments that aren't actually included in game, Slava? The short tutorial levels to start the game are also vague in their breakdowns. Arrow keys to move, and you can't mess with keybinds. You're also introduced to your save mechanics, spacebar to save once the girls are on the same symbol, easy enough. Then we get our turn back time power. Wait, what? Yes. Apparently, we have the ability to turn back time. And it Control-Z's our last move, and we can do that 3 times. However, that is not explained to us. We are given direction that W will turn back time. And that's it. I had to deduce that we had 3 times to do that, and how to keep track of that on my own. In the top left corner of the screen is where we can see the counter. It's covered up by my little sub-goal. Sorry. Also, apparently this will refill over time. Also not told to us by the game. It happened a couple times, so I assume it refills over time. This whole time travel mechanic really throws a bit of a wrench into the lore since it doesn't really make a lot of sense at all. I chose to just sort of ignore that and the mechanic as a whole since I didn't even use it in my playthrough. Which ended up being good practice because we lose this ability later on without any reason as to why the mechanic is just taken from us. There's a little number counter at the top of the screen with the number of steps you've taken and another number that I assume is the recommended steps for this level. Considering the fact that my steps totaled up to double what that number was, no way in hell was I about to worry about the number of steps it would take me to complete a level. New threats aren't explained to us, so we have to figure out what they are on our own. This next one bugs me a little, but I understand the purpose behind it. The save symbols we use start to vary in color, and at first, I thought that meant different things, but they don't. Ultimately, they just stand for little checkpoints throughout the puzzle, which is good since the puzzles themselves are so damn unforgiving. We don't get a tutorial to explain their purpose. We have to figure that out for ourselves. This game, you also get surprised with loud jump scares of the screaming, glitching, and eardrum bursting variety when you get introduced to quick time event enemies. Yet, again, this new threat is not explained to us at all, so I had to find out all of that shit by myself. Specifically, when we get to our first potential jump scare with this owl. Which I'll give you credit, you made me rip my headphones off. The minigame sequences are also very unclear because you don't really get to understand what their purpose is or why you're collecting the masks, and it's somehow going to help you. I ended up finding out much later in-game because I refused to take hints from the game because I was stubborn, which was stupid. I was stupid. Shut up. I'm about to get a little deep in the mental illness and suicide aspect of this, so if you don't want to hear that, now is a good time to get something to eat, get a drink, take a shit, like, subscribe, check out my Patreon where you can support me and all the works that I do. You know, something to kill a minute or two. One of the images from the intro also mentions self-harm, which in today's world should have been warned about on the Steam page, or even in the opening panels of the game. While D.I.D. sufferers can struggle with self-harming or other self-destructive practices, it is not a guarantee. This was a major warning that should have been plastered on the store page and very clearly was not. I know in the interview Slava mentions they're bad with marketing, but this was just plain common sense that wasn't used and can be harmful to people who aren't expecting that in this game. Once we get through a few puzzles, we get a sort of dark world version of the interaction that Lily just had, but now through Emily's perspective. This interaction, on the other hand, does nothing, save for squeeze a chuckle out of me.
It was being controlled by another. I really need help. I can't take this city anymore. You can escape the city, but the others will bring you back, over and over again. To escape yourself, you must count every move. What do you mean? Never mind. Go away. I know nothing about the forest. What?
Just a few steps to the side of this, Emily mentions how a woman she sees in a cafe once awoke a desire in her to be as beautiful as she is. You wouldn't know it by looking at the little sprite, but that woman in the cafe is meant to be Elizabeth Short. As in, the Elizabeth Short. Also known as the Black Dahlia. Yes, it is here that the story actually makes a little bit of sense if you look at it in this way. No, this is not explained at all in this game in any way, shape, or form. This is a conclusion I came to after getting this video together, which does not speak well of the game. If you look at the game from the time period of when the Black Dahlia murder occurred in the 1940s, you'd see more sense to be made considering the out-of-date phrasing of D.I.D. and the presence of Elizabeth Short, which timeline-wise could be conducive with the use of the drug she's given in the asylum known as sodium ammobarbital. However, further and further into this game we go, the inclusion of the Black Dahlia murder makes even less sense. Reason being that the multitude of personalities that Lily has are being created by events and things that would not cause this break, and these things would not occur later in life. This is also why I am seriously questioning Slava's supposed degree in psychology, because if he had a master's, he'd know these things. The personality that was inspired by Elizabeth Short, Lizzie, also spawned another personality that I called Slizzy, slit-mouthed Lizzie, upon the discovery of Elizabeth's body. Lester, the OC placed in the unknown murderer's stead, then plans to feed into Slizzy's demand to be killed the same way as Elizabeth to emulate her beauty. That being said, just as she goes over to have him do the deed, a demonic chick with her tits out suddenly appears. This is the arrival of Camilla. Or Camilla, maybe. I don't know how to say it. And apparently, she straight up kills Lester and sets the fucking hotel on fire. And then we go into the next chapter. We meet Karen, who is much more clearly seeking some sort of understanding by turning to the church for help. Oh, and at the church, we also get insulted by some God is dead sign toting tool, and that manifests another personality named Ashley. It is within the church that Karen is assaulted by the priest, and Camilla kills him and sets the church on fire. This awakens the Saint One, another personality who is much more evangelical Christian and expects everyone to do as God demands. From here, we go to the asylum because Tom called them to come and take her away. And now we are met with Ashley and then Alice, the drug-addicted personalities. Ashley takes the drugs, but Alice feels their effects. Again, this is not how personalities work. Blah, 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 broken record, dead girl. After more puzzles and one useless scene with the doctors who just up her dosage and decide that if it doesn't work, they'll just lock her up, we end up being given the choice to hang ourselves. Yep. See, nothing. What? Now I'm not ready to surrender! That being said, I chose to keep fighting, and after a few more puzzles that made me rip my hair out, we escaped. Right? Not quite. Ashley and Alice are literally still in the madhouse, and Emily and Lily are running through the woods alone. This is where the game completely loses me. After spending an hour trying to get to the end of the woods... A little note from the editor's chair. Premiere couldn't get the footage down into that 5-second audio clip fast enough, and this is literally the highest setting that I can get my Premiere to go. This is 10,000% speed. I condensed an hour and 15 minutes of footage into 44 seconds of this quick time lapse. No, that's not a glitch you're seeing on the screen right there. That is literally just me dying repeatedly. So this is just me voicing over that 44 seconds because there was nothing else to fill the footage. Let's get back into the voiceover now. I'm so sorry this took so long. We end up getting caught and returning to the asylum where we end up hanging ourselves. And then all the personalities hang themselves. Then what we're left to assume is the real Lily ends up taking over and they're like, oh, we're cured. What was the point in us even leaving the asylum if we were going to be forced to go back and make that decision? The illusion of choice. Also, as a final note before the end of the game, the hint mechanic that I never used at the beginning, I finally broke down and decided to use later on. It's not so much a hint mechanic. It literally shows you step by step what to do. And because the game is so very glitchy, sometimes they don't work. God forbid you fall behind those fuckers, because if you do, you're shit out of luck. You either have to wait until they're done showing you so that they can start again, or they glitch out and you don't get to see the hints anymore, and you have to waste another hint to find that success. As I was closing the stream and we came to this conclusion that obviously the game really freaking sucked, and I got so incensed that I felt the need to make this video, somebody mentioned to me in the chat that Doki Doki Literature Club falsely advertised itself as a dating game that had no warnings either. That actually got me to do a little bit of digging, and I came upon a thread on Steam headed by user Ace42, who put out why they thought Doki Doki Literature Club was dangerous. Not should be banned. Not bad. Dangerous. So big thank you to Ace42 for helping me to find the Werther effect. What is the Werther effect? The Werther effect was coined after the effect of copycat suicides spiked after the publication of Goethe's The Sorrows of Young Werther. The story tells of an unrequited love, and ultimately, the pessimistic Werther takes his own life so he doesn't have to live with that pain. A string of men dressed like Werther, and even going so far as to use the same pistol as was described in the story, were turning up dead after having taken their own lives as well. A lot of times, that book was found at the scene, and people actually had the gall to call it a persistent rumor that Werther fever was starting to spread. Werther's story touched people in such a way that Friedrich Nicolai even wrote his own fanfiction with a happy ending for Werther. The joys of young Werther gave Werther the ability to be with his beloved, grow past his passionate youth, and rejoins the world as a respectable man. And then shit hit the fan when Goethe himself expressed disdain for the work and literally spent the rest of his life in a literary war with the guy. He even wrote a poem entitled Nikolai on Werther's Grave, where Nikolai shits on Werther's grave. I'm sorry. I'm just picturing it. I couldn't even get through the first take when I did this. Oh my god, I can't do it. I'm not reading that again. The reason I bring this up as well is because it brings forth an important point that needs to be made. Difficult subjects should absolutely be explored through artistic means and mediums. However, they should also be properly advertised and labeled so that we don't have any future Werther fever outbreaks. Shows like 13 Reasons Why didn't carry proper warning labels for individuals that are susceptible to suggestion. In today's society, mental health is on everyone's front burner, and that's fantastic. The fact that more people are talking about it and taking it more seriously means that more people are going to be able to find help and support. That being said though, certain people do need to have proper safeguards in place so that we know what to expect when going into something. That can also be seen as the end of all the grand twists and surprising character deaths that can really make the story important to you. So, what is the solution? Blanket everything so that no one gets their little feelings hurt? Tell everyone to grow a pair and quit being such a pansy? For the world of the internet, we are exposed to a rapid fire of information on a daily basis, and reflection of mine is in that same superhighway. I think that the game's full array of topics discussed shouldn't be put on display because that kinda ruins the story element to it. But there should be a warning for the heavy topics that the game could touch on, so that people who may be susceptible to those things can either dodge it for their safety or be prepared to handle that information when they find it. It does come to the responsibility of the creators and the discretion of the consumers. Healthy types of both will always exist, and there will always be those who blatantly disregard the signs and walk off the edge of the cliff anyways, and then turn around and blame the sign maker for it. It does come down to a case-by-case basis. One size fits most has never been a healthy system to work off of, and maybe we're on our way to changing that. Alright, let's review. What are the roles being played by the personalities in Lily's system? Lily Witchkin is obviously the host. The game is centered on her, and we see her the most often, so she is both the most prominent character and most prominent personality. Emily Limbs strikes me as a mixture of different roles. A mix of suicidal teenager who also serves as either a gatekeeper or protector of Lily's system. Lizzie Shorts is obsessed with her appearance and rather mean towards the other personalities, even going as far as to tell Emily to kill herself. She is a rather ditzy sort whose obsession with Elizabeth Short drove her into a frenzy that almost got them all killed. She strikes me as a self-destructive and outgoing personality. Slizzy, slit-mouthed Lizzie. After discovering Elizabeth's body, Slizzy took over and begged to be mutilated in the same way so that she could emulate her beauty to the grave. Slizzy strikes me as a manic or self-destructive personality that Emily even admits was hard to keep control of. Camilla is something of a brash and violent protector, a demon who worships Satan and carries a real hard-on for Christianity. She only took over after Karen was assaulted and before Lester could kill Slizzy. Also seems to have an affinity for setting dangerous places ablaze, since she only did it in the places where Lily was in imminent danger. Karen is the hushed church mouse type personality that is so scared and desperate for answers to her memory loss that she assumed she was possessed. She was unfortunate enough to fall victim to a priest who used her desperation for peace to prey upon her, and this would likely have fed more into her shy demeanor and gentle way about her. The forest one seems to be the one formed from a time when Lily got lost in the woods looking for her cat and got attacked by wolves. The forest one manages all the pain and trauma that Lily experiences, leaving her image that of absolute carnage. The pretenders are seemingly the ones who know the path to safety, pretend that they know everything to provide comfort, but are ultimately prolonging the pain. There's two of those, happy and a sad one. The dead one is a cold and rather cynical personality, always leading them into places where they will undoubtedly suffer or be in dangerous situations. The dead one strikes me as a dangerous personality that has somehow started wreaking havoc on Lily's system. The Saint one is an evangelical Christian sort who is completely devoted to the church and God, that she's even willing to kill people to make them see his way and do as expected. Honestly, I don't know what this freaking personality's purpose is. Ashley is manic, who needs to be medicated because of how completely unhinged she is. Self-destructive and dangerous to others, I would just label her as another dangerous personality. Alice is blissfully ignorant and really just a dummy who has developed complete dependence on those pills. Self-destructive personality who also has addictive attributes. And then there are two more, those twin braid-toting bitches from the minigames, and those are somehow considered personalities, despite us never getting any dialogue or acknowledgement of their existence. So I have no fucking idea what their role is supposed to be. I'll give these character bases a 4 out of 10. They're all blatant caricatures of personality traits, and they're so dramatized to the point that I wasn't rooting for anyone in this game. They all suck. How is D.I.D. portrayed? In short, it's offensively written. To portray the common misconception that people with D.I.D. will have a psychotic personality in there, or a murderer or a monster, is irresponsible and ignorant, especially coming from someone who claims to have a fucking master's degree in psychology. This doesn't show that degree at all, and I honestly feel like this should be filed right up there with hatred on how not to make a game where your main character has a unique psychology. Easy 0 out of 10 for me. Period. Playability and replay value? The puzzles are interesting enough to keep you playing. I found myself wanting so badly to solve them myself, and they were truly entertaining for me. There are a multitude of glitches throughout the game. The minigame, you could get one of the sprites to jump outside the map and just sort of run in the air until she bumped into something, and then you'd lose that round. Hints would also glitch because sometimes they'd fall off of the map as well, and you'd have to wait until they either fixed themselves or you'd have to restart the game. Also, the poor tutorial, the unclear threats in the game, the quick-time events that you have to learn the game even has on your own, and the fact that sometimes your goal will suddenly change for no reason, make the game so much more difficult to find joy in playing. Not to mention, the mechanics that we are shown, but we never get to use them, and once we finally do, we never get to use them again, even if the personality is still with us. It crashed on me twice during my playthrough of it during dialogue scenes. One time the text on screen glitched and it just gave me the number 1, rife with spelling mistakes, and sometimes the dialogue and sprites don't match up or repeat. Those aren't the only reasons I won't be playing it again. The major reason why I won't be playing again is because the puzzles, while entertaining, are so damn harsh if you mess up. Yes, there are checkpoints, but the spacing between those checkpoints is massive, and it took me almost 20 whole hours to complete the whole game and finish it on hysteria. I will not even be attempting neurosis. 1 out of 10. The 1 is for the puzzles. That's it. Bugs and glitches? 3 out of 10. The bugs didn't make the game unplayable, but they sure as hell pissed me off. Properly advertised and rated? -4 out of 10. The lack of trigger warnings on this game is horrendous, and frankly, whoever gave this guy his degree needs to be taken out back and shot like Old Yeller. For legal reasons, that is a joke. Is the story any good? 2 out of 10. The story has potential, but it would need a full revision before I would even consider picking this game up again. Instead of Lily trying to figure out who is the real personality, actually have her interact with the Doctor more. Make the Doctor a character and give Lily an actual personality that people might like. Make us care about what happens to her and her alters. Get Emily to lighten the fuck up and give her more of an older sister protector role. The game could actually be a long journey where Lily goes through each diary with the Doctor. Those could be the chapters. And in each of the diaries, we meet her personalities. We start from where her trauma began, and all the puzzles and challenges are her coming to terms with the trauma and recovering from it over time. Make it a story of Lily persevering through the worst time in her life and coming out the other side okay. Hell, make the endings like best, good, bad, and worst case scenarios to mix it up a little bit, and make the moments of dialogue actually mean something. Let the player have some control over that. Let them eventually build up the personalities like different characters. These are all things that are capable of being done without feeding a negative stigma. And doing some actual research on the disorder would do you some good, and maybe take a sensitivity course. I think that I've said all that I can say. So for reflection of mine, I give it a dead rating of 6 out of 60, which is a definitive Z. I sentence you to 7 years in a college getting an actual degree in psychology. This isn't a courtroom, but it's my video, so you know what? That's my verdict. I'll see you guys next time. And now, as we close the book on this